Okay, I'm going to explain the tracks on page 42 in your manual. The question group activity pathway drawings number 1. The scenario is draw pathways of attack man stepping an attack, eliciting a withdrawal of the foot and feeling a sharp pain. So you have to draw the reflex circuit, which is the first pathway you have to draw, and then conscious awareness of the pain tract, which goes up to the somatosensory cortex, primary somatosensory cortex. So let's start the reflex circuit first, and you can choose whatever legs, side of legs you want. Let's label the side first. So this is the central nerve system and 2 legs facing us. So this will be the left side and that'll be the right side. So make sure you indicate which side is right or left when you actually do draw a pathway in the final exam. So let's use our left leg as the toe which gets the pain. So I'll draw an attack here, and stepping an attack occurs, and there will be a receptor receiving the pain, and the receptor will probably be the free nerve endings, which senses the temperature, pain, and coarse touch. So this is the drawings of the free nerve endings that receives the pain sensations of damage to the tissue, and that receptor will travel all the way, will send its axon and travel all the way up to get into the spinal cord. So we'll go into the spinal cord. I'll just make this process more simple, and let's say the axon goes up and that eventually goes into the spinal nerve of S1, which covers the dermatome of the big toe. And you have to decide whether the information will travel through the dorsal root or the ventral root. And yes, you will say it's dorsal root because it's a sensory information, and this is the axon, and the soma of this neuron will be found in this dorsal root ganglion. So make sure you label the soma and other important parts in a neuron. So this is the dorsal root ganglion. Dorsal root ganglion, D. Make sure you spell all out in the exam. And then you have to think of the reaction caused by this pain. So the reaction is lifting up the toe. So you have to use different muscles in your leg, the left leg, and you can say it's all flexor muscles. So in this diagram we have hamstring, which is innervated by L5 ventral root and L2 psoas major. L2 is innervating the psoas major, which means you have to connect this information to L5 and also L2. So how we do this? Very simple. We just make another branch of this primary afferent. The fancy term for that is bifurcation. So that's one of a branch, and link to L5 region for hamstring. So we'll just link this axon, and that axon will travel through here and synapses with interneuron, And the other branch, let's say the other branch will start here, bifurcates, go all the way up to L2. So let's link that. So I'm going to just draw the axon terminal here and link the axon here. Like that. So it's a very long primary afferent neuron, which goes up all the way up to L2 spinal column area. And what you have to do next is connect that information to the efferent neuron, which is our lower motor neuron or alpha motor neuron, using the interneuron. So remember, this is a withdrawal reflex. You have to draw the interneuron. The only reflex that doesn't need interneuron is the stretch reflex, and this is not a stretch reflex. So we have to draw interneuron that connects this information to the efferent information. So this is interneuron, and that interneuron goes to the ventral horn, which contains the lower motor neuron or alpha motor neuron that innervates the muscle. So that's the alpha motor neuron that goes to the ventral root, comes out of the spinal nerve, and goes to the hamstring. So let's connect that to the hamstring. It's axon terminal of that lower motor neuron. And you can label some of the parts here. That's ventral horn. And this neuron is our alpha motor neuron. Motor neuron. And we can connect other muscle, the psoas major muscle, with the same way we did for hamstring. So we have interneuron that connects the afferent to efferent, and we have the efferent neuron. It goes out the spinal nerve, innervates the psoas major. Again, that's ventral horn. And that's our alpha motor neuron. And you can also label this as our interneuron. So one side of the leg is being lifted at the moment. That's good. And is it all? No, we have to use the opposite leg to stand. And this is the cross-extensor reflex, which occurs concurrently with the withdrawal reflex. So you have to draw this cross-extensor reflex as well. And cross-extensor reflex uses the extensor muscle, so the opposite leg uses the quadriceps, which is innervated by L4. We can extend another branch from this primary afferent. There's another branch here, and draw an interneuron, and that interneuron, this case, has to cross over to the other side and synapses with the lower motor neuron, which innervates the quadriceps muscle. So that's it. And you can point that to the decussation of an interneuron, and that's a ventral horn. Alpha motor neuron, and that's interneuron, and that's a decussation. So voila, we have withdrawal reflex and cross-extensor reflex. So again, it might look complicated when you finish drawing, but it just follows the basic principle. The reflex, other than stretch reflex, requires 3 neurons to be involved, which is afferent, interneuron, and efferent neuron. So you have to draw 3 neurons, and the problem for a withdrawal reflex is the information has to travel different levels in the spinal cord. So what happens is the primary afferent, which is the afferent neuron, branches out and goes to different levels of the spinal cord, and that branching in the end looks a bit complicated, but it just follows the same principle. And once you draw the afferent, the next step, if you're confused, draw the efferent first, because efferent, you can always find efferent neuron in the ventral horn. And after you draw the efferent neuron and connect it with the corresponding muscle, then all we have to do is connect the afferent neuron to the efferent neuron via interneuron, and you'll get this withdrawal reflex and cross extensor reflex. So that's the first question of the first activity, eliciting a withdrawal reflex of the foot. Let's work on the feeling a sharp pain bit. So you've got to consider which track you're going to use for conscious awareness of sensation. You have learned there are two pathways that are involved in conscious awareness of the sensation. One that carries TCP and the other carries F2Ps. In this case is the pain, so we have to draw a tract which carries TCP. And what is this? This is the spinothalamic tract. So that's the identification of the tract. And now you have to remind yourself that in order to draw this tract, you need three neurons. First is first order neuron, which is the primary efferent, second order neuron, and third order neuron. Third order neuron and first order neuron are easy to draw. Second order neuron, it might get confused between spinothalamic and dorsal column tract because the crossing over location is different between those tracts. So let's start from the easiest neuron, which would be the third order neuron. And because second order neuron crossover and the other neurons doesn't cross over, what happens is the pain on the left toe will eventually be delivered to the right side of the brain. So let's zoom that in. It's toe area, and that information will be delivered, which means the axon terminal of that third order neuron will be located in this area. Again, this is the right hemisphere, and the body of the third order neuron is always found in VPL thalamus if it's from the body, neck below. So that's the soma of the third order neuron, and you have to link that with an axon. So you can label this as a third order neuron. And the body of the third order neuron is found in the VPL thalamus, ventropostural lateral nucleus of the thalamus. And where is our first order neuron? First order neuron ready draw. Its soma is in here, dorsal root ganglia, and that's where it finishes. The first order neuron for spinothalamic tract is very short. It finishes at the dorsal horn of the spinal cord where it entered. So that's the dorsal horn. In other words, dorsal horn is where you find the second order neuron. So second order neuron soma is found here, so we can draw the second order neuron. And the crossover happens at the spinal cord, and take this highway, which is located in the anterolateral part of the spinal column. So you have to indicate that as a decussation of the spinothalamic tract. Decussation. And its axon, the second order neuron axon, travels all the way up to the VPL. So all we have to do now is connect this axon to the VPL of the thalamus and the same side. So let's draw the axon terminal first. So axon terminal of the second order neuron is found in the VPL. It goes through the color-coded area in the brainstem, so don't worry too much about the specific area where it goes through in the brainstem. It will be color-coded for you in the exam. So you just have to link its axon with the anterolateral tract in the spinal cord. So it goes, the axon, the white matter goes through anterolateral tract in the spinal cord. It continuously goes down. Well, we have to say it goes up, but we are starting from back the other way around. So it goes through here, and finally this is the continuation of this axon. So you can see it crosses over at the spinal cord and goes all the way up to the VPL thalamus on the right side, and sinuses with the third autoneuron. Now we can label this as our second autoneuron, and our first autoneuron is the primary afferent that was involved for withdrawal reflex. This is our primary or first autoneuron, and that's it. That's the solution to, or track the drawings of the pathway for group activity 1 in page 42. Okay, this is the second group activity question. Draw pathways as a face user. First, voluntary rubbing the left finger against an F key on the keyboard, and second, feeling the little dent on the key. So you got to think which track will be involved. Is it reflex, or is it conscious awareness tract, or is it descending tracts, and so forth. If you look at the first question, voluntary rubbing of the left finger against F key, this is the descending tract, which actually, or voluntary activation of your intrinsic hand muscles to move your finger. And it specifies the side, which is the left finger, and you can picture it, the right side of the motor cortex will be involved to activate the left side of the finger. You have to choose whether it's lateral upper motor neuron or lateral descending tracts or medial descending tracts, and the finger is distal muscle, involves distal muscles of the hand, so it'll be lateral upper motor neuron. And so far we have learned lateral corticospinal tract to move for the voluntary distal actions of the body. So the first question is narrowed it down to drawing the lateral corticospinal tract. And let's have a look at second, feeling the little dent in the key, and it's a feeling which is the sensory tract, ascending tracts, and little dent in the key, it's using the fingertip, and this is dent, awareness of dent or edges, which means it's related to fine touch sensation to discriminate the texture or edges of the object. So it is fine touch, and you have to use dorsal column tract to get the sensation of that fine touch. The second question, the answer to that second question is drawing the dorsal column tract. So we have these two sets of templates, one for descending tracts and the other one for ascending tracts. So the descending tracts, what you realize is the homunculus is slightly different. The one on the left, the homunculus represents motor homunculus. The one on the right represents the sensory homunculus. So let's start by drawing the lateral corticospinal tract. Unlike the ascending tracts, the descending tracts involves two neurons, which is upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron. And lower motor neuron is exactly the same as alpha motor neuron, which we can find in the ventral horn of the spinal cord. So it's very easy to draw the lower motor neuron first. So let's do the easiest step. And there are two templates for spinal cord. One is, well, both looks different. The stark difference is first the ratio between white matter and grey matter, and the other one is the this septum, the line that divides the tract into two, one for upper body and the other for lower body. If you have a look at the bottom spinal cord tract, you don't find the septum, which means it's all about lower body. So you can safely say this is the spinal cord for cervical level, and the bottom spinal cord is the template for lumbar spinal cord. Let's level the side first. So this is our left and that's our right side. And let's also draw a finger. So the index, let's use the index finger. We want to move our index finger to press the F key. And we need a muscle to do that, so let's just draw arbitrary intrinsic hand muscle. And that muscle will be innervated by the lower motor neuron on the same side. The lower motor neuron doesn't cross over, which means if you want to move left hand, the lower motor neuron is on the left side. So left side of the ventral horn of the cervical spinal cord is where you find the lower motor neuron. It will travel through the ventral root and it will be innervated to the intrinsic hand muscle to move the finger. So that's the first part of the descending tracts, the lower motor neuron. You can also write alpha motor neuron, that's fine. And that's the soma, where you can find the soma in the ventral horn. Now, upper motor neuron, you have to draw upper motor neuron, lateral corticospinal tract. And lateral corticospinal tract cross over to the other side, which means the right side of the brain will have the body for the lateral corticospinal tract. And that's near the hand area, so let's draw the soma around here to indicate that's the soma of the upper motor neuron. So this is the soma of the upper motor neuron, and we'll find it in the primary motor cortex. And we have to link that neuron to the lower motor neuron, which is in the spinal cord. So all axon goes through the white matters in the CNS. And so let's just link the axon, goes to the white matter, it doesn't synapse, so it has to go through the white matter, and this particular area where it passes through is called internal capsule. And that's an example of projection fiber in the brain. And this axon goes through the anterior part of the brainstem. So first it goes through the cerebral peduncle. So this is the cerebral peduncle. And the second, it goes through the pyramids in the medulla. So that's the medulla pyramids, this area. And the junction between pyramid and the spinal cord, you can imagine this spinal cord is aligned in medial way, but you have to imagine this is crossing over to the other side, and let's cross over to the other side. So it's no longer in the right side, it's left side, and follow this tract in the spinal cord, which is known as our lateral corticospinal tract in the spinal cord. in the spinal cord. And we can say that's the decussation point, the junction between the medulla and the spinal cord, start of the spinal cord. And from this tract, the terminal axon will go outside that tract and synapses with this lower motor neuron. So that's our lateral corticospinal tract to move our hand. You can see we started off at, this is the right side of the hemisphere and left side. We started off at right side, now we are controlling the left side of the hand. So that's the first question. The second question was feeling the little dent, which is using the fine touch. So we can draw some of the receptors in the fingertip. So let's say this is a receptor, encapsulated receptor. Let's say this specifically can be Merkel disc, which is slow adapting receptor. And this afferent fiber will go through, let's say let's use this cervical spinal cord, goes through the dorsal root, and it will have its cell body in the dorsal root ganglia. So you can imagine dorsal root ganglia has not only the receptors for fine touch, but also receptors for temperature, pain, and coarse touch as well. So it's full of different modalities, the somas with different modalities. Now we have to decide where this axon will go to, and because it's fine touch, F2 phase is delivered through dorsal column tract. In other words, it will go to the dorsal column. It won't synapse anywhere in the spinal cord. It will just take the highway straight up to the brain. So this axon will go through the dorsal column, and we have to decide which one, medial or lateral. And the answer is lateral, because lateral indicates the upper body. So this part contains all the information, F2P information about the upper body. And in the lecture I said the easiest way maybe to remember this is, so you draw a small human, upside down human, and the medial is foot and lateral is for the hand. So medial, this area, is for the leg or lower body, and the lateral is for the upper body. So this dorsal column tract will go through the spinal cord dorsal column, and let's just link that to the right side template. So we'll go through and, sorry, it's not here, synapse with the second motor neuron in the lower medulla. In the lower medulla, you'll find several nuclei. And the nuclei that is associated with dorsal column are those two in the back. Similar, it's medial is for the leg and lateral is for the upper body. And so that's for the dorsal column tract. It's a part of the dorsal column pathway where you can find the second motor neuron cell bodies. And the one we have to take is the lateral one, which is for the upper body. You have to remember this is still the first order neuron, so it doesn't cross over. So we still use the left side of the nuclei. And this nuclei is specifically called nucleus cuneatus. So this axon terminal will be located in the nucleus cuneatus, And the second autoneuron, I'll just delete that, is found here, nucleus cuneatus. And the second autoneuron crosses over to the other side. So it crosses over at the lower medulla. So let's label this lower medulla. And take this highway, which is color coded medially. So it crosses over at the lower medulla and take this purple highway up to the brain. And the second autoneuron axon terminal will be found in the VPL of the thalamus. So this axon terminal is found in the VPL thalamus, and let's link this axon to the lower medulla. And the purple axon that is found in the brainstem is also known as medial lemniscus. So the full name for dorsal column tract is actually dorsal column medial lemniscus pathway. So if you want, you can label this axon as a part of medial lemniscus. Lemniscus means ribbon, so it's medial ribbon in the brainstem. So that's our second autoneuron. Okay, let's label that second autoneuron. And our third autoneuron is from VPL thalamus to the sensory homunculus of the fingertip. So it's straightforward. Soma is found in the VPL, goes to the fingertip area. And that's our third autoneuron. And the cell body of the third autoneuron is found in the VPL nucleus of the thalamus. And where was our first autoneuron? First autoneuron was this neuron which contains the Merkel disc receptor at the end. So this neuron is our first autoneuron. So this is the story behind how we move our finger and how we feel the fine touch sensation of the fingertip. So my advice on how to practice this the pathway drawing is, if you have a study group, or you can make your own, create a scenario where distal muscle is used or proximal muscle is used or different sensory modalities are used. You can even add the face to practice the corticobulbar tract or trigeminal spinal tract, trigeminal thalamic tracts for sensory information from the face, and practice based on that scenario. And practice the sides and where it crosses over, and try to label everything you can while drawing the pathway.